Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, Sorry to interrupt your conversations, but welcome to the June-July meeting of the ITD Photo Club. Streaming live on YouTube today. So we even have a chat room and stuff. It's kind of cool. Let me see if I can get my chat room over here. Hang on, let me go to my chat room. If y'all can hear me okay, someone in the chat room, please let me know. Okay. So here we go. We are streaming right now. Okay, so welcome to the June-July meeting. This month's topic is a niche of photography called street photography. Okay. Now, a lot of people have done, the street photography has been famous ever since, it's been done since portable cameras have been around, because it's a style of photography where you are basically capturing candid images of strangers doing their own thing. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about a couple things here, some definitions. We're going to talk about some famous street photographers. All the samples that I'm showing you were taken by me. Okay? And then we're also going to talk about the legal ramifications of street photography. Okay? Because there are some legal ramifications. We're going to go over this month's photo challenge. You have 2 guesses as to what it is. And we'll critique the last challenge, which was night photography. Okay? So first up is the definition. Okay? So Wikipedia defines street photography as, also called candid photography, is photography conducted for art or inquiry. Inquiry meaning that you're doing an editorial article that features unmediated chance encounters and random incidents within public places. That's very important. It's always happened in public places. All right? Although there is a difference between street and candid photography, it's usually subtle, with most street photography being candid in nature, but not all candid photography can be classified as street. So, you take a surreptitious photo of your child or a relative doing something stupid at a party, it's candid, but it's not street. Okay? Street photography does not necessitate the presence of a street or even the urban environment. It can be in a village somewhere. It's just people in public spaces being photographed candidly, which generally means without their knowledge. Okay? Though people usually feature directly, street photography might be absent of people and can be an object or an environment where the image projects a decidedly human character in facsimile or aesthetic. Okay? So, one can classify street photography as a subset of candid photography. Okay? So, it requires a great deal of patience to do street photography and the ability to blend into the scenery, okay? Because you don't want to call attention to yourself. You want to just be part of the shrubbery. Now, I'm not saying you have to hide. This is not paparazzi. You're not hiding. You're there in plain sight, and you're taking photographs, but you're not making yourself obvious about it. Now, like all things, these are rules of thumb. There are guys who break the rules and do very well at it. One guy is called Bruce Gilden, Gilden. And he is famous for an in-your-face style of street photography. Well, he'll be walking along in the opposite direction you are, and all of a sudden he'll just crack out his camera and his flash and just jump in your face and take your picture. And then walk away. Without even so much as a excuse me or a by your leave. Okay? This works in New York. because everyone there is fairly inured to this sort of thing. So you have to read your where you're doing this. Miami, not so much. But I would say, in LA, you could probably get away with it depending on what part of LA you're standing in. But New York, you can kind of get away with that. But most of the time, the generally accepted practice is to just become part of the furniture. You're just there, no one knows you're there, and no one notices that you're doing what you're doing. Okay? You can photograph anything. One technique is to photograph all sorts of things. Be taking pictures of plants and trees and birds and kids and things, and then while you're there, you slide in a shot of somebody on the street. Like I said, you're trying to be inconspicuous. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean that you simply capture whatever is happening in front of you. Remember, images should be taken rather than made. Okay? It makes it easier to create a cohesive set of shots that you may want to display later on. Like I said, there's generally two schools of thought of this. One is shoot, and then at some point in the future, go through what you've got and see what you can kind of group together that makes a cohesive set that's worth displaying. Or go out to shoot with an idea in mind of what you're looking for. I want to do an expose on homeless people. I want to do street vendors. I want to do something. You pick a theme. Children in the park, although that can get you in trouble. Okay? Warning. All right? But the other way is shoot all kinds of things, and then later on, in the comfort of your own home, go through and maybe you can collate a set that looks good together. Similar to what you do with travel photography, that you might you take more pictures than you could ever possibly need, and then you pare them down to something cohesive. Okay? Like I said, it could be that you're looking for loneliness and despair. Okay? The job of a street photographer is to document the human condition. Okay? You're there to show real people in real situations. It's almost photojournalistic. Okay? Now, many people starting out tend to, and I'm guilty of this as well, tend to gravitate towards the plight of the homeless or the desperate, because they have a lot of, they give the images what's called gravitas. In other words, they give a meaning and a depth to the image, because you're looking at all these poor people and their lives. But if you're doing it just to show off an awesome set of pictures about poor people, then you don't get it. It's not about the pictures, it's about them. Okay? You're there to bring their plight to the awareness of others. You're not there to say, I'm an awesome street photographer. Look at all these bums I photographed. Okay? If you do that, you're just taking advantage of these poor people as bad as anyone who just beats them up. Okay? So there's some moral high ground to all this that you kind of have to adhere to. Okay? But not all of it has to be depressing black and white. Color photographs serve just as well in the street genre. Now, why is black and white favored? Mostly because most of the famous street photographers did this when there was only black and white film. So a lot of the images that people work with are black and white. Black and white also takes color out of the equation, which lets it reinforce light, shadow, and composition. Okay? That's one of the reasons why many people favor black and white, because the color stops being a distraction. Where, this image has all these beautiful blues and different colors and things like that, but and it's an okay image, and it's showing people in a street scene, in a public space, and it's an okay image, but it's not really, the color helps, but if I make it black and white, there isn't much to say about the composition or the gravitas of the image. But on the other hand, the human condition that you're showing doesn't necessarily have to be always bad. For example, this is a perfectly legitimate sample of street photography. And, you know, it's a mother's love. Okay? So you have those areas. Let me check and see if anyone's been saying anything. Nope. Hopefully some people have been getting this thing. 3 people watching now. Yay! Which is probably Miriam, Anna Sylvia, and whoops, did I jump a bit? Nope, I didn't. Okay. All right, so street photography and the law. Okay. Now, it's usually done in a public space, such as a street, sidewalk, or park, involving candid images of people going about their daily lives. Now, in the United States, it's allowed under the legal premise established by the Supreme Court in the case of Katz versus the United States in 1976, where that there is no reasonable expectation of privacy if you're standing in a public place. However, in France, it's the opposite. In France, you are expected, you expect privacy, even if you're standing in the middle even if you're standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, you have your right to your own privacy. Taking your photograph cannot be done without your permission. So if you're traveling and you want to do street photography, be aware of the national laws. Okay? Now, that's when you're taking the photographs. What happens afterwards is also important, okay? Because it can create legal consequences, okay? When you use the photographs for editorial purposes or to illustrate a story on matters of public interest, there's no problem because you're just using them to prove a point. You're not singling out any particular human being and making them, you know, a pariah or anything like that, okay? Like for example, all those photographs I showed you of homeless people, okay? If I was doing an editorial on the homeless in Madrid, Spain, and I used those photographs, and that one got published, that's no problem, okay? But let's say that if it gets used for advertising, for commercial purposes, now we're talking something called misappropriation. Because in order to use someone's likeness for commercial gain that isn't your own, you must have a model release form. You must have a legal form that says they have given you permission to use their likeness for your commercial gain. You may have made an arrangement to pay them royalties, or they may have done it freely. Sometimes, like when your kids enroll in school, one of the forms that you fill out that you may not have noticed is actually a media release form for the school, meaning that when the school photographs stuff, they may use it in the ads for the school, right? Pictures of your children at school in uniform or whatever doing school things. And that release form gives them the legal right to do it, and you're paying them to do it. Because, you know, tuition. So that's misappropriation. Another problem could be is if you have other problems like defamation, false light, and the right of publicity, which are problems with unlicensed images. Now, what do those mean? What do those mean? We're going to talk about those right now.
So what if your pictures are on display, somebody wants to buy one? You're making money off of that. Do you need to have the person's permission to sell the picture?
As an object of fine art, no. But if you are going to be putting it, if an ad company decides they want to use your picture of a street scene on billboards across the country, and or on TV commercials or something like that where you're going to be paid residuals, you need to have release forms for the people involved unless it's just simply impossible to do. For example, if you took a picture of a crowd in Times Square and that picture gets used on a billboard or something like that, it is not reasonable to expect that you're going to get a release form from everybody who was standing in Times Square that's in your photograph. That's just not reasonable. And if they're standing in Times Square and they don't think they're going to get photographed, they're ridiculous. So that's what's going on with that. But the issue here is, like, you go to, say, like say you're at an art show and you have one print of this or maybe a limited series of prints and you're going to sell that, that's okay. You're not trying to defame the person in the picture. You're not trying to, make them be something that they're not. Okay? As long as you're honestly representing them and you're not doing it because, hey, I took a picture. It's like I took a picture of some famous movie star and I'm selling it. Okay, that falls under right of publicity. Okay, so we're going to get to that right now. So the topic, defamation, is where you are just insulting someone, where you take a picture of someone and you're making an insult out of it. You're defaming their character with it. Okay, that's actionable. False light is when you use a properly licensed individual. Okay, properly licensed image, which is used for a purpose that's not originally thought of. So let's say, okay, I take a picture of you, Don, and you're standing there holding a cup of coffee, right? And it's like, hey, I'm going to use it as a stock image, and you sign the release form, and that's cool, right? So when you use it as a stock image, did you guys know what stock images are? So advertising companies, when they need photographs, rarely ever talk to photographers directly unless they're looking for something really, really specific, okay? Most of the time, what they will do is they will go to a stock agency, which is a company that owns the rights to thousands or millions of photographs, one of the largest being Getty Images, okay? And you pay them to use this image. Now, some images are royalty-free, meaning you pay once and that's it. Or some of them are royalty-based, meaning you pay for the number of impressions of the image. In other words, if you're going to be showing this on 10,000 commercials, you got to pay the owner of you got to pay Getty 10,000 times. It might be a small amount, but you're going to be paying, like, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to pay $500 for this photo, but they might say the royalty's $1. But if you make 10,000 impressions, that's $10,000. And a chunk of that goes to the photographer. A large chunk goes to the photographer. So most photography you see in advertising agents that used by advertising agencies are stock photographs. And stock photographers are guys that'll take pictures of the mouse, they'll take pictures of iPhones, they'll take pictures of people in office scenes. You ever seen it? Like in a Gartner presentation, you see all these really handsome looking people, really well dressed, standing around the office table looking like they're really busy, right? They're all actors and models. They have no idea what's written on the paper in front of them, okay? Think Zoolander, okay? They have no idea. So they come into this expecting that the image is going to be used for things like I said, like a Gartner presentation on meetings or something like, to emphasize something about meetings or things like that. False light comes in. Let's say, go back to the example, I took a picture of you holding a cup of coffee. And then it gets used in an ad and it says, do you have HIV? Okay, and your face is clearly recognizable, right? You didn't sign up for that. That's not what you signed up for. And you could sue for false light because it's making people think that you have HIV when you don't. At least I hope you don't. Okay? Right? So that's what false light means, where you're using the image for a purpose that was not originally intended. Let me give you another example. Remember the Samsung Note 7 fiasco? Where the Note 7 phone,
Catching on fire.
the batteries would catch on fire. So one of the games that my son plays, I forget which one it was. It's a shoot 'em up game. Oh, it was Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto actually put into the game that you could use a Samsung Note 7 as a hand grenade. You dial a number on it, and then you throw it, and it would burst into flames, setting a building on fire. Right? They got sued for false light because they were allowed to use the name Samsung Note 7 and the image, the digital image of a Note 7, but they didn't know that they were going to use it as a weapon in the game. So Samsung sued them for false light, and they had to remove it from the game. But I know because I saw my son use it a few times, setting a warehouse on fire. He bought five Note 7s in the game, and he was using them as incendiary grenades. Okay, so false light. Right of publicity, again, like I mentioned before, it's if you take a photograph of a celebrity whose appearance is trademarked, okay, and you start selling it because they own the way they look. They actually legally register themselves as a trademark. Yes. Some of them even go so far as to insure the famous parts of their bodies. You all remember, I'm dating myself, but you all remember Kathleen Turner? The actress Kathleen Turner? She actually insured her legs for $5 million. Okay? So.
Let me ask one.
Yes, sir.
And if you go to studio, like Photoshop,
Mm-hmm.
and who owns this copyright? Then he can sell this one to somebody?
Okay, so now we're talking about intellectual property rights, and that's a different topic. Okay? The photograph that you see, when you hire a photographer,
Right.
okay, unless you state in the contract, in writing, to the photographer, saying that we own the rights to, because you're going to be photographing stuff that is copyrighted by us. We own the rights to the images in fee simple. Okay? In other words, if you are designing, let's say you have you're designing a new car, and you want someone to take an awesome set of photographs that are going to be used in your ad campaigns, but this car hasn't been released yet. The photographer normally retains the intellectual property rights for the photographs. The photographs belong to him or her to do with as they see fit. But you could, let's say Tesla or some company, could make a rider saying, you are not allowed to use these for commercial purposes, but you are allowed to put them into your portfolio for personal references. Okay? Most of the time when you do portraiture, that's kind of an understood rule, and out of courtesy to the customer, you will put that in there as, I am not going to sell your portrait to somebody else because you hired me to photograph yourself for yourself. But I reserve the right to put them into my portfolio so other people can see the quality of my work. Okay? Now, if you don't have that in there, that means you actually do own all the rights to the image, and you can, and if they sign the release form, you can do with it as you see fit, as long as you don't defame, do false light, or break right of publicity. Okay? Now, one other thing that you have to worry about is property releases. Like, remember, I told you, you're photographing someone's new design for a car. In order for you to be able to publish these photos, they need to sign a property release giving you the permission to use the images for some other purpose. In other words, the release forms are always provided by the photographer to the subject or the owner of the subject, which could be a parent or the designer or company who has got a vehicle design or whatever, you know. It could be a new mouse, who knows, some product, okay? You have them sign the forms, and that specifically defines what legal rights you have to the images you take, okay? Like I said, if you're not doing it commercially, don't worry about it. And if you're doing street photography just for purposes of maybe going to be showing it here at the club, or you're going to be maybe doing a show or something like that, you're going to be fine, especially if it's not reasonable for you to be able to get everyone's release forms afterwards, okay? Because it's not expected to be reasonable that you have to track down everyone that was in a shot, you know, months after you took it. They may not be there anymore. They may have moved somewhere else. Something may have happened to them. You don't know, and it's not reasonable to expect that you can do that, okay? So now, the other thing is also, be mindful in this day and age when you're going to go do this. Learn to read the room, as they say, you know. Read the atmosphere. If everyone is like super tense, you're at some place where there's a lot of tension, like it's going to be like there's something happening that, like, heaven forbid you're at a riot or something like that, which you take some fairly amazing photographs of that thing, but remember, you're at a riot, okay? Stuff's going down, and you need to be very careful of what you're doing and where you're doing it, because someone may take it the wrong way, and at that point, emotions are running high, and you can get hurt, okay? I'm not saying that this is a dangerous thing, but you have to use some common sense, okay? Like, I wouldn't have wanted to be the guy in the Croatian stadiums watching the FIFA final when taking photographs of the people when the game ended, because they would have been pretty upset. Although that would have been more dangerous, I think, in England, because they are known to have riots after if they lose something, you know, just even in the local matches. Anyway, so the June-July photo challenge is, guess what? Taking it to the streets. Okay? Hit the streets and come up with a set of 3 photographs, street photographs, that work together. Could be anything. Remember, it doesn't need to be the homeless. It could be pedestrians. It could be people in a park. It could be, you know, it could be a family doing something, but not posed. These are never posed. These are candid. Okay? It's candid photography. And as I said earlier, not all candid photography is street photography. But all street photography is candid. Now, mind you, there are some folks who will actually go and ask permission. They are a little more timid about the whole thing. They'll see some strange person on the street, and they will say, "May I take your photograph?" And sometimes, especially if you're doing a pet, if you're doing someone's pet, it's okay to ask permission of the owner, "May I photograph your pet?" Because I guarantee you, the dog is going to behave exactly the same way whether you ask it or not. Okay? So, you know, it will do exactly, it will be as cute or as ugly or as whatever interesting is about the dog, with or without the owner's permission, but it's usually good to get the owner's permission. Okay? Children especially. If you want to photograph a child that isn't yours, you really need to talk to the parent beforehand. "Hey, I'm taking some street photography classes. You know, do you mind if I photograph your child doing his or her thing?" And if they say no, "Okay, thanks," off you go. You could try and do it surreptitiously, but it might get you in trouble later on if somehow they end up at the show and says, "Hey, wait a minute, that's my little Billy. What's he doing there? When did you take this? I didn't give you permission for this." Of course, if Billy's in a public park, the law's kind of on your side, but will the judge favor. Are you some sort of pedophile, son? And he was like, what? No, no, no. Better to avoid that. You know, so if you're doing children, ask the parents. It'll be okay. Especially if the kids are out playing out in front. You go over there, hey, do you mind if I photograph your kids while they're doing it? I'm not some sort of pedophile. Here's my card, whatever, you know. Have cards. It's okay. So, for our next trick, we are going to do our critique and review of the last challenge, which was night photography. Now, let me see if I can get this to switch over correctly. Where's my Firefox?
Can the pictures be just of buildings or streets, like vacant, at night, you got an empty street, like downtown or something, you can take pictures?
Okay,
Or
street
do you
photography
have
is not
people in it?
street photography is not literally streets. That's actually just scenes. That's like land. That's what they call urban landscapes. People have to be in it. You're trying to capture the human condition.
Okay.
And it could be just some folks sitting around in a park not doing anything. You just walk by, take a snap, and off you go. Okay. So
They could be on plain tennis in a public park. Okay.
as long as it's public, it's got to be on public lands.
Right.
It could be some, if you're downtown and there's some folks that are sitting underneath the metro rail eating their lunch, just, you know, boom. And you don't have to get up close to them unless you want to get like all the grisly details of their face. You could step a foot further back and zoom in, you know. So I'm trying to switch over here to my other so now, hang on. Where is, here it is. I'm on the wrong thing, but that's okay. Let me switch over now to Firefox and get over to Flickr. Okay. And let's go to the groups. Let me move this over here so you guys can see it. Yes. I'm trying to get into groups, but my browser is acting a little slow because probably the stream is killing me. So hang on, let me hit, oops, I gotta come over here. Here's my mouse, here's my mouse. Okay. So let me enlarge that. I gotta see what I'm doing over there. There's my mouse over there. Enlarge. Okay, and I'm trying to get into groups here, but it's not responding because of our amazing. Okay, let me reload this. Okay, here we go, and into groups. There we go. All right. ITD Photo Club. And let's go to the photos. Here we go. We got some good stuff there. Okay, so let's go to photos. So here we go. So, gotta wait for this one to sync up. Finish syncing up there. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is Candido at large, and he has some pretty interesting. A little hard for me to see on this side. I gotta look on my side over here. So let me. So we're seeing some interesting lighting effects he's got going on there.
Can you maximize that?
That is. Oh, let me click on the image itself.
There.
Okay. Good, because now I can just use the arrow keys to switch. So that's actually just a little Buddha that he's been that he got some interesting lighting effects going on around it. It's actually a pretty nice. It's actually a pretty nice use of light and shadow.
And reflection.
And reflections. So that's pretty nice. Anyway, let's go to the next one. And this is with some light painting. Now, light painting is when you have taking a long exposure and you use a light source and you actually just draw in the air with it, because the camera will record the trail of the light source, and you can actually write.
But not you.
Yeah?
But it won't pick you up.
Well, it won't pick you up because you're moving. You're not emitting light. If you have a light on you, yes, you'll leave trails. It's like when you see those traffic shots where you see, it looks like Tron, where you have the streets are just full of these streaks of light. Those are actually the headlights and taillights of the cars zooming through the scene. Okay? So that's a nice little application of light painting on there. And then this one's a bit of a more gritty, we're going to say DC Universe style. It's a little dark going on that one. So the next one coming up is by Ivelisse. What's that? I can't tell what's that happening on the bottom of the screen, Ivelisse?
There's a
A
barcode.
building, an illuminated building, the windows,
Mm-hmm.
downtown.
Okay.
Miami River, a building downtown, and the full moon like in.
Yeah, that's actually pretty nice because let me tell you, photographing the moon can be very difficult because it is literally the brightest object in the night sky. It is orders of magnitude brighter than any star. So this is why when you see people that take pictures of like the Milky Way and stuff like that, you never see the moon because the moon overpowers all of that. So you have to do those shots on moonless nights if you want to get stars. Okay?
Airborne moon.
Right.
Cool.
So that's very, and you notice that you can see the details on the moon itself, which is good because most of the time you get the moon and it's this big white dot. Because it's fairly hard to expose for the moon because there's just so much blackness around it. You have to spot meter down tight or really adjust your exposure afterwards. But it most of the time will be blown out if you just use the regular average metering because the moon is bright, but there's just so much dark surrounding it that it's going to expose incorrectly. You will have to spot meter for the moon or shoot manually and try and get it just right.
It was manual.
Yeah.
No tripod.
Hmm. Yeah, well, it's bright enough that you could do that.
I tried. I didn't have the tripod that time.
No, but I'm saying it's bright. The moon is bright enough that you can handheld shoot it. You can handle. It's bright enough to do that. That's like if you are to do, if you go to Las Vegas. Okay, the main strip of Las Vegas has a nickname that was given to it by Kodak, and it's called Glitter Gulch. And it's got so many lights that you can actually handhold and shoot exposures at 1/60th of a second. Other fun fact, the Luxor Hotel, which is the big black pyramid,
Yeah.
has a searchlight that shines straight up out of the top of it, and it's visible from orbit. You can see it from the International Space Station. That's how they usually find McCarran Airport, because they're like right across from it. They just look for the Luxor, and then look, okay, there's McCarran Airport. It's the big black space. And look, over there's Area 51, right? So, okay, this one is kind of interesting. I'm looking at it very small, so I can't see it. This is, what is,
That's the Borowski exhibit in Flamingo Gardens. It's kind of a Chibuli type of.
it looks more like a Tim Burton kind of thing to me.
But
Yeah, it looks more Tim Burton than Chihuly, I'll tell you that much.
It's better, it's similar to Chibuli in glass.
Yeah, but yeah. If Chihuly did something for Tim Burton. So,
But it's interesting. It's running still until September, and they
Mhm.
are gonna open another night.
by the way, don't forget the abstract, our abstract art show. Remember Emilio's group of painters, the 7+1 group?
In the library.
Yeah, it's in the library. It's running now until the end of September, I think. And guest artist, me, their first photographer.
When are you gonna have another activity there?
Well, we're actually talking now to the folks from the Frost Museum. They might pull our show and take it over there, but Emilio's working on that, so I can't. That's up in the air right now. So we'll see what the next one's going to be. Okay, next one up. I like the subtle lighting on this one. I like the subtle lighting on this one very much because
In Flamingo Gardens, in Pembroke Pines. At night.
Yeah, here you go.
Look on the internet because the exhibit is open during they
Mhm.
only open certain nights.
Now, here's a pulled back shot of the same thing where you can see more of the scenery surrounding it.
Oh.
And to be honest with you, I like this one better because it's a lot more focused on the subject. And whereas this one, it's nice, but it's a little too busy. See what I'm saying? But I'm just saying that's my opinion. For me, it's a little too busy. I like this one better because it's focused and it's almost an abstract because you're like, what is this? Yep. So, and there's some more from there.
That's spectacular.
Yep, that one's pretty nice. Okay, and okay, so you did city lights on that one. And unfortunately, oh, you were trying to do the fireworks. That was it. Yeah, fireworks can be tricky.
Very far.
Yeah, it's very far away, and you have to run that exposure pretty long. How long were you doing the exposure on this one?
I used a tripod and I think it was more than 1 second.
No, for fireworks, it has to be about 10 to 15 seconds to be able to catch the firework going up and then exploding.
I don't remember
It's fireworks can be tough. I will say though that
what they were taught.
that Olympus cameras have a mode in them. Their newer cameras have a mode in them that makes fireworks super easy because it does like a bulb exposure, but a bulb is when you just leave the shutter open until you say no. Stay open until I say otherwise. But what it does, which normally just exposes the whole sensor and starts absorbing as much light as possible, and you can easily overexpose a night shot doing that if you like open it for 5 minutes or something like that. But they have a mode that's called live composite, and what it does is that it takes a baseline image of your shot, and then as let's say you tell it to do 10-second exposures, and it'll start taking a series of 10-second exposures, one right after the other, and only layer on when there's changes in the light, if light has increased. So in other words, let's say you have a building or a scene that starts at the blue hour when the sun has set and the sky is beautiful, but you want the building with its lights on, but you want that blue hour before they turn on the lights. So you set your camera up, you put it on a, say, maybe a 2-second exposure, stop it down a little bit, and then you start the live composite. It'll get that blue hour sky for you, but then as the lights start coming on the street and cars start passing in front, it'll start adding the street lines and the lights of the building into the shot without overexposing the blue hour because the actual sky is getting darker. So it won't add any more light to the sky. And if you leave it there long enough, you could start catching stars, but you most likely catch star trails because if you're too long, the stars will move across the sky and leave a trail. Also, if a plane flies overhead, you will see bip, 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 bip. Especially if you see the flashing light, you'll see a line flash, line flash, line flash, line flash going across the screen.
Yeah,
So-
Morse code going, man.
Yeah. That's the one from me. That was the sample I was giving everybody, which is a house a couple blocks up from mine that everyone is really envious of because it's on an 1.5 acres. And it's a nice, they're selling it for $2.5 million.
Do it have a pool?
Huh?
It has a pool.
It will have a pool. They're not done yet. So that's where we are with that. So
So,
between,
you gonna buy that one?
huh?
Are you gonna buy that
Lotto.
one?
That's all it takes. So mine doesn't count. So going back over what we had shown, I'm torn between this first Buddha by Candido and this one by Ivelisse. Okay, I happen to like the subtle lighting on this one very much, but that's my personal taste. And I hear somebody talking. Who's talking at me? Hang on. Fireworks can be tough. I will say though that Olympus cameras have a mode in them. I don't know what's going on with that. Anyway, so For this one, I'm gonna go with Ivalisa's shot as the best one for the with Candido as the runner-up. Mostly because I like the subtle tones of the shot, and it's kind of an abstract in as much as you're still scratching your head as to what this thing is supposed to be. So congratulations, and that's it for this month's edition of ITD Photo Club. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully you all at home could have seen this, and we're going to be ending the stream now.